Good morning, everybody listening in Puerto Rico and outside. You're welcome to the 12th Caribe Plurilingüe Symposium. This is a timely or semester by semester event that the English Department of the University of Ghana Humanities Faculty organizes for graduate students and professors to come and present their research and also to share what they want to do with that research in the future. So we want to thank upfront the Faculty of the Social Sciences and especially the Caribbean Studies section that has been helping us, Professor Faraclas and I, Dannabang Kuwabong, to organize this symposium every semester. Without their support, both logistical and also moral, we will not have been able to carry this out. So I want to welcome everybody, and as we listen to the presentations, I hope that they'll answer certain questions and also provide certain leads that will encourage others to continue the research that is being offered here. Thank you very much, and without much more to say, I would invite Professor Faraclas, the coordinator of the program, to come and introduce the first panel.
Thank you, Professor Kuwabong. Okay, our first session has a replacement. We were supposed to have a presentation by someone who had to withdraw at the last minute, so it's going to be replaced by a presentation by myself and some of my colleagues. And then we will have a presentation by Alexandra Martinez Canavate and Dannabang Kuwabong. And then we'll have a session of questions just after that. All right, this first session is something, is a presentation that was put together by myself and some colleagues who are working toward imagining post-colonial linguistics. And it's focused on silencing and silence. The people who I'm presenting on behalf of include Don Molicek and Erica Marrero of the University of Puerto Rico, Rio Piedras, Micah Coram of the Inter-American University San German, and Priya Parota Natarajan of Music and the Earth International. At present, the peoples of the world are experiencing an unprecedented increase in acts of hegemonic silencing. This is no accident, because we are also presently experiencing an unprecedented drive to normalize the sexist, racist, and capitalist dystopia toward which the silencing discourses of domination have propelled us over the past few millennia. In this latest and most insidiously silencing wave of globalization, dominant politics has been reduced to unabashed kleptocracy, and dominant economics has become nothing more than a casino without borders, where the odds are heavily weighted in favor of the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer, as you can see from this chart. So if you look at the blue line, okay, it stays down low for the bottom 90% of the population. So for 95% of the population, we control just about 10% of the world's wealth. And then the top 10% of the world's population controls the other 90% of the world's wealth. The 62 richest individuals in the world have as much wealth as 3.6 billion people, 3.6 billion poorest people in the world, that half of the world's population. And then if you look at those 62 individuals, their wealth has increased by $542 billion over the last 8 years, whereas the income of the bottom 3.6 billion people has decreased by $1 trillion over the past 8 years. The poorest half of the global population since the year 2000 has seen its its wealth increased by only 1%, whereas the top 1% of the top 1% richest people in the world have seen their wealth increase by 50% over the past 10 years. The past 20 years. And over the past 20 years, the bottom 10%, the poorest people in the world, have seen their average income per year rise by about $3 per year. That's about 1 US cent per day. Okay, but what does this have to do with linguistics? Well, despite our claims of objectivity and neutrality, we linguists are complicit in the establishment and maintenance of social injustice and inequality, because linguistic theory and practice have largely been domesticated and disciplined to serve domination. Moreover, we as scientists once claimed to have the power to create a planet better than the one provided by nature. We made that promise, as well as the power to describe and analyze all that exists. But we now admit that the death-seeking knowledges and technologies that we have unleashed are rendering the world uninhabitable, and that some 95% of matter and energy is dark and beyond the reach of our narrowly exclusive scientific paradigm. So we haven't made the world a better place, and we can't explain 95% of what's going on out there. In this presentation, our focus on silencing and silence is aimed at demonstrating how that which is not studied, which is not listened to, or which is not said in relation to language itself and the living persons and communities who use it, constitute the 95% of dark matter and dark energy of language-related phenomena that remain beyond the reach of linguistics as it is currently constituted and practiced. Okay, so this doesn't just apply to linguistics, this applies to Western science in general. So of the many philosophical traditions of antiquity, it is not surprising that the ideas of Plato have played the predominant role in shaping Western thinking, science, religion, and academic work. This is largely because Plato's metaphysics has provided political elites with the tools to maximize social control. Plato asserted that there is one ideal, true, universal, normal, and good reality, and one ideal, true, universal, normal, and good way of knowing and living in the world. He also asserted that the truth lies beyond our experience in the world, so we need to rely on an elite class of experts to tell us what is real and good. Plato's philosophy became the predominant one because its unitary vision of the truth, so-called truth, together with its separation of what we understand as reality from what we experience in the world, has allowed those in political power to cultivate a class of experts, or symbolic elites, whose work it is to establish and propagate versions of the truth that correspond with their agendas of domination. In this way, people's control over the understanding of truth was usurped, first by clerics and ultimately by academics and scientists, carefully trained and selected to formulate and replicate patriarchal, ethnocentric, and economically exploitative worldviews as so-called one and only truth. The internalization of Platonic normative binaries is fundamental to the operationalization of systems of hegemonic rule, where coercive force is largely replaced by internalized discursive force to establish and maintain asymmetries of power in society. When we spend our entire lives trying to conform to artificial, idealized, patriarchal, ethnocentric, and economically accumulative norms, established not in our own interest, but in the interest of politically dominant classes, we also spend our lives striving to become who those ruling classes want us to be, instead of who we want ourselves to be, serving their interests instead of our interests, shaping reality in their image instead of in our own, and projecting and imposing their norms on ourselves and on all with whom we come into contact, such as our students, our colleagues, etc. Bakhtin demonstrated how in the normative standardization that has transformed Western European languages into tools of hegemony, the dialogical, dialectal, and dialectical aspects of language have been systematically suppressed and denied, so that authorial or authoritative monologue has usurped dialogue. Ideal, predictable, standardized language has usurped real, unpredictable dialect, and true so-called scientific discourse has usurped heteroglossic dialectical interaction among many truths. Chomsky's linguistics focuses on a platonically idealized mental faculty for language, which corresponds to an equally idealized universal grammar, which can be studied by determining the competence of an individual idealized, decontextualized monological user or speaker of an equally idealized monolectal variety of language. Because sociolinguistics tends to study non-idealized empirical data from plurilectal and plurilingual users of language in rich dialogical and social context, Chomsky has characterized it as butterfly collecting, banishing it from essential theoretical linguistics. All too many linguists, including sociolinguists themselves, have gathered incredibly robust and potentially powerful paradigm-threatening data sets, only to proceed to silence and domesticate their data for the purpose of providing so-called proof for some so-called theoretically significant aspect of the latest version of so-called universal grammar. The systematic erasure of women and their language has shaped many of the central ideas of Chomskyan linguistics, which trivialize women's crucial input into language transmission and acquisition in favor of Chomsky's innate universals. What is astounding in Chomsky's work is its almost exclusive focus on children and their language and its nearly complete lack of interest in women and their language practices, in spite of the fact that mothers have always been and continue to be central agents in the transmission of language to children, apparently even while the child is still in the womb. Another aspect of this patriarchal interpretation of language and the science of language can be found in historical linguistics. So we use in historical linguistics, one of our main tools is the family tree, as you see there on the screen. And when we trace family trees back, we're always traced back to the conquering and colonizing language of men. And women's languages that are in contact with those conquering languages, and the languages of the colonized that are in contact with those colonizing languages are erased in the process. In linguistics, the search for universal grammar or universals of language acquisition too often become the search for an idealized Eurocentric Platonic so-called reality, hidden behind an Enlightenment mask of Euronormative so-called universal equality and so-called objectivity. It is no coincidence that Chomsky's universal grammar coincides so neatly with standardized European language structures, and that so-called universals of first and second language acquisition coincide so neatly with how languages are acquired in Western societies, where monolingualism, monoculturalism, and monoidentification have been held up as standardized Platonic norms. As linguists, we often unconsciously assume that the colonial imposition of one dominant unitary language, culture, and identity, which the people of parts of Europe have experienced over the past few millennia of hegemonic rule, is the universal norm in terms of how humans everywhere have always related to language and negotiated situations of language contact. When one tests the validity of these assumptions, however, one finds that for most of human history and in most human cultures, contact, plurilingualism, pluriculturalism, pluridentification, and creolization have been the norm rather than the exception, just as they are in the Caribbean today. And here you can see that this holds for the Pacific, Africa, the Americas, and the Caribbean before colonization, before invasion. Of all of the branches of formal linguistics, however, classical semantics has been the one that has been the least contested within the Chomskyan paradigm of cognitive science. So he contested all kinds of things in linguistics up until the 1950s and 60s, but when Chomsky came along, the one thing that he didn't question was classical semantics. The research of George Lakoff and others in the 1960s and 1970s, who were working under Chomsky to develop a framework for generative semantics, led them to question the very premises of the formal logic of classical semantics, which constitutes the basis of Western hegemonic science in general, and Chomskyan linguistics in particular. When these scholars were effectively excommunicated by Chomsky, they regrouped and initiated a second wave of cognitive science and a new paradigm of cognitive semantics. So Chomsky essentially banished them from Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and they formed this group of people who were working on a second wave of cognitive science. And one of the things that they found is that humans tend to use the mathematical reasoning on which classical semantics depends much less than imaginative reasoning, such as metaphor. Metaphor, they found also that metaphor is not figurative but very literal and concrete, and plays a role in determining even the truth value of propositions. So for example, when we talk about time, the metaphor that we automatically use in the cultures like the culture of Puerto Rico and the Caribbean, also of Western Europe and the US, we use a metaphor of the path. So when you talk about time, you think of the future as ahead of you and the past as behind you. And we can't even imagine talking about time without that metaphor. But that metaphor is not mathematical reasoning. That metaphor is imaginative reasoning, which Chomsky completely ignores, as does conventional classical semantics. Using those examples, we can see that as linguists, especially as Caribbean linguists, we need to open our eyes and ears to acknowledge the fact that 95% of real living language is silenced by linguistic science, as well as to acknowledge the fact that real living people see and use language primarily as a way to act in and on the world, as performance in dialogue with an audience, as a skill learned from our mothers, as an expression of imaginative reasoning, and as a way to project multiple voices, practice many cultures, and adopt many identities, as we do here in the Caribbean. Only then can we begin to create a living linguistics in our own image and in our own interests, rather than a normative, dead linguistics designed by the ruling classes in their image and interests. Thank you. Okay, our next speakers will be Alexandra Martinez Cañabate Sotero and Dannabang Kuwabong, and they're going to be talking about spatial liminalities from trauma to healing in Ama Ata Aido's Dilemma of a Ghost. And speaking to this one is for the projection.
Thank you. This is the paper we're going to present is an ongoing project in which we'll be looking at three novels: White Sargasso Sea by Jean Rhys, Jultain by Mara Vienna Warner, and then we didn't want just to focus on the Caribbean, but we wanted to see how an African writer also perceives the African diaspora or the Caribbean diaspora or whatever, and how it relates to the way in which African diaspora people or European diaspora people always reconceived and reconceptualized, romanticized, and fell into the illusion that if they could only grasp what is back home, the Europe, the Africa, all their trauma problems will be solved, all their insecurities will be erased, and they will become normal again. And so for this particular presentation, we want to focus on Ama Ata Aido. Also, we chose Ama Ata Aido because this play was written in the 1960s when most Africans were still not even considering looking at the African diaspora issues. And Alexandra has been working very hard at it, and she will be presenting this paper also in Ghana among Ghanaian scholars so that we can complete the research. So, Alexandra?
Thank you. Most reading of post-colonial African diaspora literatures focus on the theme of psychopathology generated by identity confusions, cultural tensions, and alienations out of ignorance or misguided perceptions. Marriage between diaspora African women and continental African men often flounder because of these cultural misunderstandings. To validate these conclusions, it is necessary to engage in post-colonial trauma theory to unpack latent and immediate causes for the psycho-emotional disintegration of African diaspora female characters as they seek an elusive African culture escape as a location for healing from their traumatic past. Most of these characters suffer from prolonged grief disorders, a form of post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, generated by unhealed generational historical memories of slavery, poverty, racial and cultural marginalization. I'm going to begin with the examination of the cultural and ideological and relationship contradictions and tensions between continental Africans and African diaspora people. To begin with this, we need to know that our main character, Eulalie, is an African-American woman who has always dreamt of moving to Africa to reunite with her African roots. This is something embedded in her by her mother, who also saw Africa as an escape from her trauma and her hardships in the U.S. So she marries a Ghanaian man, Ato. Upon arriving, we see that the illusions about Africa by the African diaspora people nurtured during the Harlem Renaissance are not adequate. The African diaspora and its traumas and hardships through post-Atlantic past slavery and discrimination has romanticized Africa as a coping mechanism. Bella Brodsky states, "Negritude of the temptation to fetishize Mother Africa as a way of retaining a primordial connection to a collective memory, she considers a dream of racial repatriation no longer viable." We see this in Eulalie. The moment she arrives to Africa and to Ghana, she sees that it's nothing like she expected. Continuing, we're going to explore the cultural meanings of an intercultural marriage in Ghana and the USA. Marriages in the USA tend to be private. The couple is more important than anything else. In Ghana, marriages are a familial ordeal. The family many times chooses the partner for this single bachelor. The family must approve of the couple, and interracial relationships are not common. It is expected that one marries within their tribe or sister tribes. The idea that Eulalie is the descendant of slaves is an insult to Ato's family. The fact that Eulalie and Ato marry and do not tell the family is also an insult. Eulalie and Ato also decide not to live with either's family. Eulalie's family is dead, so therefore there is not much they can do there, but Ato's family is alive, and they decide to stay away from that family, which is also seen as an insult to his family, especially since Eulalie is not partaking in any familiar cultural tradition. Exploring the psychosocial and cultural dislocations and confusions of Western-educated Ghanaian culture, Ato's Westernized ideas of fatherhood, sexuality, and reproduction are wrong according to Ghanaian society. It is expected that as a Ghanaian man and woman and as wife and husband, they must conceive a child. But as a couple, they decide not to. Although at some point Eulalie decides that she does want to have a child, Ato decides that he did not and that they had decided not to, so they will not. It's a pity because according to Ghanaian culture, you're expected to be a parent, and instead of deciding to tell his family that they had decided not to have a child, he led them to believe that she was barren. So this leads to a whole ideal where they have to go through this tradition of healing her barren womb, which scares Eulalie since she knows nothing about this Ghanaian culture, and Ato refuses to teach her anything about his culture. So this is very tough on her. Ato seems to have forgotten that he must aid his wife so she may form part of his family and culture. Ato does not explain Ghanaian customs and etiquette to Eulalie. Therefore, she commits mistakes that are considered insults to Ghanaian culture. Ato's response to how both Ghanaians and African diaspora people see each other is very controversial. Eulalie and Essie, Ato's mother, do not understand each other. Both Ghanaians and the African diaspora struggle to comprehend each other's manners. They have created erroneous ideas of the other and must learn to put aside their illusions and accept each other for who they really are. The death of Eulalie's parents is what the first origin of grief and feeling of loneliness and abandonedness. Eulalie feels a need for empathy and companionship since she has no family, and since the family that she did have was mistreated by social injustices. Her mother was a laundry woman that struggled very hardly with the social and cultural and racist discriminations that she faced. The trauma rooted in slavery and racism Yeah. Okay. Should I leave it there? 2 minutes? Okay. There's trauma rooted in slavery. That's where her mother stands with the fact that she was mistreated by cultural injustices. And we see the idea of prolonged grief disorder and obsessive compulsive relationship disorder in Eulali's Escape, constructed in an undiagnosed spatial liminality and obsessive compulsive disorders. These bifurcate her ability to shift illusion from reality. Thus, in Ama Ata Aidos, Dilemma of a Ghost, she suffers a deal of ignorance, illusions of grandeur, and unwillingness at first to open to new possibilities of life in Ghana. This compounded with her undiagnosed and unmourned grief for her dead parents, pain of generational and historical trauma of slavery, racism, ethnocracy, and social fragmentations, feeling of abandonment, and obsessive romantic phenotype or racial identifications, geographic and cultural imageries, and relocations, illusions of embracing blackness as panacea to her pain of isolation, unrealistic expectations in marriage, as between only a couple, in contrast to what it means in Ghanaian context. The play's treatment of social cultural demands on couples subsequently generate vigorous trauma to Ato and Eulali and bring shame to Ato's family. If Ato would have if Ato would have been healthy enough to understand the hardships and his role as a husband and as Ghanaian man, knowing that his wife is not Ghanaian, he could have helped her from these traumas that she is suffering. All she wanted was to form part of this culture, and he does not permit that by alienating her from his family and by being ashamed of his wife. If Ato would have included her in his family and defended his wife, she could have healed from these traumas. Unfortunately, Eulali has to discover that by herself, and she decides to leave Ato and go straight to his mother, asking for acceptance. Ato's mother welcomes her with open arms, and that is when the healing process begins, when she finally feels like she has reached home. Thank you.
We are supposed to have questions now, but I think what we should do probably is go on to the next presentations, and then we can have questions for the first presentations at the end of the next group of presentations. So our next presentation is Variedades en Contacto, Convergencia y el Génesis de los Criollos Afroatlánticos, and the presenter is Joel Figueroa Lopez. Eso es para la proyección y tú puedes avanzar la diapositiva con esta.
So I speak through here.
Sí, entonces eso para la proyección, eso para el salón.
Okay.
Puedes leer de allá si quieres.
Okay, thank you. Buenos días. En primer lugar, esta presentación no pretende ser un análisis exhaustivo del tema, sino más bien una apreciación del mismo. Así que todavía queda mucho por discutir. ¿Qué es una lengua criolla? Tradicionalmente se conoce como una lengua híbrida derivada del contacto entre varios idiomas. Muchas de estas variedades se desarrollan debido a la interacción del colonialismo. Por ejemplo, Jamaica durante el coloniaje inglés desarrolló un criollo a base léxica inglesa, que sería conocido como el jamaiquino. Cabe destacar que estas variedades poseen una lengua lexificadora, es decir, la responsable de brindar el léxico. Suele suceder que la lengua del poder dominante, supertrato, es el lexificador, mientras que los países dominados, el substrato, normalmente se considera que aportan la parte gramatical. Así que el Pidgin into Creole Life Cycle Hypothesis es un continuo en el que ocurre el desarrollo de una lengua criolla. Se debe acentuar el hecho de que no siempre ocurre de esta manera, puesto que puede que salte uno de estos pasos. En primer lugar, tenemos la jerga, que sería un intento para comunicarse en un idioma que el hablante no domina. En segundo lugar, está el pidgin, que sería un sistema simplificado e inconsistente utilizado en un contexto particular. En tercer lugar estaría el pidgin criollo, que sería cuando un pidgin se convierte en un idioma general de una comunidad, en un idioma oficial, en un idioma asociado con un grupo étnico o político o en un idioma materno. Y por último, tendríamos el criollo, que sería cuando adquiere hablantes monolingües de L1 y se convierte en el idioma expresivo de grupos étnicos o políticos o no se usa normalmente como L2 o idioma intermedio. Sin embargo, existe poco consenso respecto a cómo las lenguas criollas verdaderamente emergen. Como consecuencia, se han desarrollado diversas hipótesis. En primer lugar, tenemos la superstratista, la cual privilegia los insumos de la lengua del colonizador como el factor determinante en la aparición de los criollos de la época colonial. En segundo lugar, la substratista, la cual privilegia las entradas de las lenguas de los colonizados como el factor determinante en la aparición de los criollos de la época colonial. En tercer lugar, tenemos el monogénesis, cual privilegia las entradas de una protolengua desarrollada en las costas occidentales africanas como el factor determinante en la aparición de los criollos de la época colonial. Por último, tenemos la teoría universalista, la cual postula que la gramática universal de Chomsky, a través de los niños y dada la pobreza de estímulos, es la responsable de la aparición de las lenguas criollas. Las hipótesis antes discutidas presentan una similitud. Todas son monocausales y monodireccionales. Por lo tanto, esto implica que solo se toma en consideración una de las posibles razones del surgimiento de una lengua criolla. A continuación, compararé dos lingüistas y su análisis sobre el funcionamiento de los artículos en las lenguas criollas. En muchos idiomas de África Occidental y en la mayoría de los criollos afroatlánticos, las marcas de número y de finitud son opcionales en los nominales. En el ejemplo del pidgin nigeriano, sería, por ejemplo, Asi House. No hablo este pidgin, pero voy a intentarlo. Que sería I see house. Y I saw a house, houses, some houses, the house, the houses. Debe imaginar que si fuera español, produciríamos una oración algo así como yo veo casa, para referirnos a yo veo la casa, las casas, una casa, unas casas. No obstante, es posible marcar el número y la definitud si se quiere o fuera necesario. I see one house, I see a house, one house. I see some house. I saw houses, some houses. I see the house. I saw the house, the houses. I see the house, them. I saw the houses. Bickerton dice en su libro, The Roots of Language, there seems, in contrast, to be hardly any variation at all in the way that Creoles handle articles. Virtually all Creoles have the same system. Según Bickerton, las lenguas criollas poseen artículos definidos para los elementos, los sintagmas nominales conocidos, los artículos indefinidos para los sintagmas nominales particulares y ninguno para los sintagmas nominales que no son específicos. Un ejemplo del papiamento: Mitin ebuki, I have the book. Mitin ebukinan, I have the books. Mitin umbuki, I have a book. Mitin buki, I have books. Bickerton establece claramente que las lenguas criollas presentan variación en el uso de los artículos. No obstante, postula casi categóricamente que la mayoría funcionan de la misma forma y atribuye estas similitudes a factores universales. Sin embargo, Bickerton no menciona que los mismos patrones en el uso de los artículos se encuentran también en muchos de los idiomas hablados por la costa occidental de África, la región de origen de la gran mayoría de la gente esclavizada en las Américas. Faraclas demuestra precisamente que debemos tener cuidado con las descripciones, explicaciones reduccionistas, como las de Bickerton. Conclusiones. Las explicaciones monocausales y monodireccionales de la emergencia de los criollos son las explicaciones monocausales monodireccionales de la emergencia de los idiomas criollos son reduccionistas y no dan cuenta de la complejidad de su desarrollo. Se podría decir que todas las hipótesis mencionadas juegan un papel importante, pero no se puede adjudicar a una toda la responsabilidad. Por ello, se debe visualizar más bien como un suceso multicausal, multidireccional. Gracias.
Our next presenter is Dr. Neusa Rodriguez Montemoino. She'll be presenting on the position of women in Yoruba traditional religion and Santeria. Eso para la audiencia virtual, eso para la audiencia en el salón y eso para avanzarla.
Ok, gracias.
¿Puedes leer de ahí así?
Yo espero que sí. Good morning, everyone. I think I need to read it from here. The three invasion of all Europe, from 4500 BC to 3000 BC by the Kurgan warriors, a group of patriarchal Indo-European semi-nomadic pastoralists, marked the end of the peaceful egalitarian matricenti society, which had been the norm. The matricenti society extended for 2 millennia from southeastern Europe to the British Isles in the west up to Scandinavia in the north. According to Gimbutas, matricentric societies were not exclusive to Europe. The early civilizations of the world in China, Tibet, Egypt, the Near East, and Europe were, in all probability, goddess civilizations, based on the matriclan with collective principles. Anthropological field studies over the past few centuries have provided ample evidence that matrifocal systems have been the norm among many indigenous people from North America to Oceania. In the 20th century, Diop postulates that the matricentric regime, which has had a duration from antiquity to present times, is the social regime that unifies the continent of Africa. African women, since antiquity, have been described as strong, determined, economically independent women who had equal access to positions of leadership and prestige as members of African empires. Yoruba and other West African peoples were brought in chains to the Americas, where they were forced into a lifetime of exploitation as slaves. The enslaved people, the enslaved women, were brought to Cuba before the 19th century. Obtaining men from the coast of Africa to be brought as slaves was less problematic for slave owners. Due to the increasing restrictions that were placed on slave trade by the beginning of the 19th century, however, the demand for female slaves increased among plantation owners, who were finding it very necessary to depend on local reproduction rather than purchase and to replenish their enslaved force. Enslaved African people brought their cultural values and their religion by means of oral tradition. In order to continue worshiping the Orishas clandestinely, the Yoruba, their descendant, and other enslaved peoples of African descent opted for syncretizing the Orishas' life stories and attributes with those of Catholic saints. Besides forcing slave African people to worship the Orishas clandestinely, the transatlantic patriarchal gendering process substantially reduced the acknowledgement and valorization of women as religion leaders in the worship of the Orisha in the Americas. Religious principles and religious narratives were redefined and readjusted respectively to correspond with Eurocentric, misogynist, and exploitative values. I have structured my arguments in this presentation according to the following hypotheses and sub-hypotheses. The work of Murphy shows how the power of women was undermined in Santeria, as female-led Casas de Santo were infiltrated and taken over by men, or eclipsed by male-dominated Casas de Santos. A pattern emerges in Santeria whereby any opportunity for prestige and prominence is made inaccessible to women. For example, santeras are not allowed to give guerreros. The warriors are received to protect the household of a petitioner from negative energy. No such limitations exist in Yorubaland. The most noticeable patriarchally gender limitation imposed on women is the restrictions of their becoming priestesses of the Orisha Orumila, who heads the Ifa system of divination. In Yorubaland, both Babalao, or male priest of Orumila, and Ijanifa, or female priestess of Orumila, are allowed to assume this powerful role in accordance with non-gendered Yoruba cultural values. The Oriate is a position of prestige that was created in Cuba, Puerto Rico, and their diasporas. Women are normally not allowed to assume the positions of Oriate, who is in charge of performing both the ceremony of initiation into priesthood, as well as the ceremony which allows a santera or santero to receive a given Orisha into her or his household. In Cuba and Puerto Rico, while santeras are allowed to ask the ancestors for their blessing over upcoming ceremonies or festivities, they are not allowed to view or convey the responses of those ancestors. While in Yorubaland, Iyalocha are allowed not only to ask the ancestors' blessings, but also to view and convey the ancestors' responses, and no one questions veracity of what the Iyalocha reports. Pataki are morality tales which accompany the Ifa and carry divination systems in Yorubaland. The non-patriarchally gender discourse that prevails in the Pataki found in Yorubaland versus the patriarchal discourse that prevails in the corresponding Pataki in the Caribbean demonstrate how women and their agency had been deemed and trivialized in the transit across the Atlantic. The depiction of women in the Historias of Santeria differs strikingly from their depiction in the Pataki of Yorubaland. Women in the Historias of Santeria are characterized as witless, voiceless, economically dependent, weak, and at the mercy of men. They are nameless, objectified objects. The image of the strong, independent, determined West African woman, which typifies the Pataki of Yorubaland, has been erased. Among the many example studies, I will summarize a few here. While in the Oche Pataki in Yorubaland, the protagonist is a female gender parrot who overcomes the ill will of others to become wealthy. In the corresponding Historia de Ochemeye in Santeria, the protagonist is a male gender parent who overcomes malevolent wishes to achieve his goals. The Obara Pataki in Yorubaland recounts the folly of a man who does not value a gift of pumpkins, with hidden wealth inside, with no reference to his wife or any other woman. The corresponding Historia de Obarameye in Santeria tells the story of a man who becomes wealthy by ignoring the advice of his wife to avoid a situation in which he is given a seemingly useless heap of pumpkins, which in reality are full of money. The Odi Pataki in Yorubaland, marriage comes as a fulfillment of the desire to be married and to have children on the part of both a woman and a man. In the corresponding Historia de Obara in Santeria, marriage is the result of rape and domination. While in the Geography Pataki in Yorubaland, women are symbolized as birds and pigeon is praised and respected for her wisdom. When she follows the advice of the Oricha in the corresponding Historia de Ejeunleojuana in Santeria, all women are symbolized by a hen, who is subject to the wrath of Echu, a male gender Oricha in the Caribbean, who imposes his will even upon the female gender Oricha Ochun, by telling her that from then on, hens would be her sacrificial animal. The worship of the Oricha in Yorubaland varies substantially from one community to another, with a given Oricha being assigned a male gender in one area, a female gender in another, both in another, and neither in yet another. My research has attempted to begin to address this healthy and non-patriarchally gender diversity, but I cannot pretend to have gone very far in this daunting task, which will require much more work on my part as well as on the part of others. My wish is that this presentation will serve to encourage other researchers to give all of these long neglected areas of research the attention that they deserve. It is my hope that this presentation will contribute to a process whereby the dawn of this new millennium will also be a new dawn for the worship of the Oricha in the Americas. We, as Santeras and Santeros, should not subscribe to the patriarchal, classist, and racial ideologies which were responsible for enslaving our African ancestors. Equal and just partnerships and access to decision-making will be key elements in any viable situation to the economic, political, social, and environmental challenges facing humanity today. More than ever, we need to recenter ourselves in our traditional West African matricentric values and allow their vision of justice and a good life for all to inspire us in the creation of a Santeria that adheres to the basic principles which have guided the traditional worship of the Oricha in West Africa and which have assumed the well-being of its people for thousands of years. Thank you.
Okay, our next presentation is by Erika Marrero Perez and Jean Cuevas Diaz and myself. It's called Lenguas en Contacto en el Afroatlántico, de las factorías a las plantaciones. Eso es para la audiencia virtual, eso para el salón, que no toque eso, y eso para avanzar la...
Ya para ver. Ok. ¿Puedo moverla? Like Can everybody hear me? ¿Me oyen? Sí, ahí. Perfecto. Ok. Hola. Buenos días. Yo soy Erika. Jan está ahí. Faraclas está acá. Les voy a estar hablando un poco sobre las lenguas en contacto en el Afroatlántico en el momento histórico del siglo XV al siglo XVIII, que son más o menos para las factorías o los castillos de tratas de esclavos a las plantaciones de azúcar. Primero, ¿qué son lenguas en contacto? Pues son lenguas que siempre están interactuando en espacios que pueden ser tanto virtuales como físicos. Los espacios de contacto siempre van a conllevar también interacciones ideológicas, políticas, económicas y culturales. Hoy día, alrededor de las 7.111 lenguas que hay en el mundo catalogadas o categorizadas, se considera que todas ellas son lenguas en contacto, porque de alguna forma u otra han estado interactuando unas con otras. Esto quiere incluir tanto las lenguas criollas, que fueron las que mi compañero Joel explicó ahorita, que sería pues papiamento, el Nigerian Creole, el Haitian Creole, tanto como las lenguas naturales, que son español, inglés, alemán, que no hay mucha diferencia entre una y otra, pero bueno. ¿Qué es el Afroatlántico? Está sombreado en esta región. Básicamente se compone de un poco de Brasil, un poco de Estados Unidos, el Caribe, y son espacios con alta influencia africana. Estos espacios desarrollaron lenguas criollas y dialectos de lenguas europeas. Dialectos de lenguas podríamos decir que son, por ejemplo, el español puertorriqueño, el español colombiano, todas estas. África, porque viene todo de África en este aspecto. África tiene una particularidad pluriorientada, que es como decidí llamarlo, que es una orientación hacia el plurilingüismo, pluriculturalismo. Es un modo de decir una integración cultural de todas las otras etnias y sociedades que están alrededor de ella, de cada grupo. Este mapa presenta la distribución geográfica de las familias lingüísticas. Básicamente nos va a interesar en su gran mayoría la región color rojo, que es la familia del Níger-Congo, que es de donde se extrajo la gran mayoría de los esclavos africanos hacia las plantaciones de azúcar. Como iba diciendo sobre el área, la orientación plural, una persona, por ejemplo, para elaborar un poco sobre el tema, una persona, por ejemplo, puede haber nacido en una etnia, una sociedad étnica, y su madre pudo haber sido de otra, su padre pudo haber sido de otro, y el mercado que le quedara cerca aún se habla incluyendo otro idioma y es otra etnia. Por lo tanto, esa persona va a tener, o posiblemente hubiera aprendido todas las lenguas de la mamá, el papá, el mercado y todas estas. Así es que pues es orientado hacia el pluralismo. Este fenómeno también se vio en las Américas con los indígenas, por eso aparece indígena. La familia lingüística del Níger-Congo, toda la última línea de abajo, es las familias lingüísticas que nos llegaron a las Américas. Y un poco sobre la familia afroasiática también. ¿Por qué entonces estudiamos las plantaciones de azúcar? Las plantaciones de azúcar son un espacio de contacto y adicional proveyó otros espacios de contacto en donde muchas de estas personas desarrollaron lenguas criollas, no todas. Las plantaciones, porque el azúcar, la caña de azúcar es una herbácea, ¿verdad?, que crece bastante rápido, por lo tanto produce el azúcar bastante rápido y se puede producir bastante cantidad. Por lo tanto, promete un negocio rápido. El azúcar es un elemento codiciado por el hombre porque provee energía, pero cuando se ingiere en grandes cantidades también crea adicción y esto hace que se asiente o se asegure la demanda del azúcar. Por lo tanto, al ser rápido, al necesitar ser procesado, la caña de azúcar, porque una vez se corta, necesita por lo menos ser procesado en menos de 3 días, porque si no se daña, el vacía se daña una vez cortada. Por lo tanto, va a necesitar mano de obra que la trabaje rápido. Esto entonces va a promover la trata de esclavos, que se va a ver en las factorías, que son los castillos, los centros donde se va a manejar y distribuir los esclavos, y obviamente pues los barcos negreros. Esto es un poquito de cómo se vería una plantación de azúcar. Esta es un poco más moderna, pero más o menos. Tenemos aquí, regresamos otra vez al mapa de África. Todas las flechas indican de dónde se extrajeron esclavos. Se distribuyeron hacia las Américas y también podemos ver hacia el norte, hacia Europa. Y también, pues este otro mapa les enseña la cantidad de esclavos que fueron sacados de su hogar. Más o menos se estima que pudo haber sido entre 96 millones de esclavos. Esto lo dice López Valdés. No recuerdo el año, creo que el 2012. Y pues aquí tenemos un poquito del diagrama. Quiere decir que todas estas personas que tenían este bagaje pluricultural, plurilingüístico, llegó a las Américas y Europa. La factoría esta es una foto tomada por mí, del castillo de Mina en Ghana. Las personas por lo regular mantenían se les dejaba en el castillo, se les retenía en el castillo por unos 3 meses. Tiempo suficiente para que estas personas busquen la manera de comunicarse unas con otras, además de que no solamente tenemos diferentes grupos étnicos en el mismo espacio, sino también tenemos los grupos europeos. Por lo tanto, vamos a tener contactos lingüísticos. Las mujeres, a diferencia de los hombres, si descubrían que una mujer estaba embarazada, la sacaban del grupo de las celdas y la llevaban hacia las áreas alrededores, a que viviera fuera del castillo en lo que terminaba de parir y todo, porque no pueden comerciar a una mujer embarazada. Por lo tanto, esto le da aún más tiempo a esta mujer a ser agente del desarrollo lingüístico criollo. La embarcación negrera es otro espacio, les proveía tal vez 2 o 3 meses, pudo haber sido aún más si el esclavo no se vendía rápido, para llegar si no se vendía rápido en el otro lado del mundo. Si consideramos, por ejemplo, esta misma mujer, pudo haber sido extraída de su casa, tenía ya algún contacto lingüístico con algún europeo u otras lenguas, de sus propias etnias cercanas. Estuvo 3 meses en la factoría, pudo haber sido que haya permanecido 1 año fuera. Luego fue enviada a la embarcación, tuvo 2 o 3 meses adicionales. Si no fue vendida inmediatamente, no podemos realmente conocer el tiempo que permaneció en la embarcación adicional. Y luego fue enviada a la plantación, otro espacio de contacto que también le da aún más contacto, interacción con las lenguas. Esta mujer, pues definitivamente tuvo más que tiempo para ser agente en el desarrollo lingüístico criollo, además de que se encargaba de criar a los hijos. En la plantación, pues pudo haberse quedado en la plantación o pudo haber recurrido al cimarronaje. Pero es importante reconocer que las plantaciones de azúcar no son el único factor para el desarrollo de lenguas criollas. Y aquí tenemos un listado de otros 18 factores, incluye ahí el número 19, las plantaciones de azúcar, que han incidido en la emergencia de lenguas criollas. Este listado de Faraclas. A cada uno de estos 19 factores se le adjudica un peso del 0 al 1, y mientras más sea su peso, más va a crecer la gráfica, su barra. Cada barra representa un espacio de contacto, un espacio geográfico de contacto, y cada color representa uno de estos factores. mientras más alto sea, y esto responde a una realidad, más probabilidades de que se haya desarrollado una lengua criolla. Por ejemplo, las más altas que vemos son espacios donde se desarrolló las lenguas criollas o lenguas semicriollas en el centro y los dialectos europeos más hacia la izquierda. Nosotros pues quedamos en el espacio de dialectos europeos. Y eso sería todo básicamente. Ahorita cuando llegue la parte de preguntas. Gracias.
Our last presentation before the question section is titled A Practical Model for Assessing Socio-Pragmatic Impairment in Children with ASD. It'll be presented by Sebastián Cruz Abreu. Eso es para la audiencia virtual, que no lo toque. Eso para el salón y para avanzar las diapositivas con eso.
Good morning. This is an ongoing applied linguistics project that I'm working on. Let's start with defining the problem, autism and language. According to Professor Geraldine Dawson from Duke's University Center for Autism and Brain Development, 25% of children with autism never learn to speak in spite of early intervention. Autism can be diagnosed as early as 18 months, but most children are diagnosed at a mean of 4 years and a half, and even later for minorities. Early intervention can help a child significantly, but due to lack of personnel with the task, some guidelines have been developed for parents to serve as co-therapists. So what's the purpose of this project? Is to delineate a program for teaching language skills to children with ASD in Puerto Rico and describe the methodology from a linguistics approach to a pedagogical issue. Also to use a multidimensional approach, not only from linguistics, but which includes every field related to the issue. Because in applied linguistics, we take from every field that is related, like psychology, neurolinguistics, and education theory, to consider fieldwork data theory with the aim of applying the knowledge gained to solving an existing problem. Okay. The main issue is that the ASD affects language skills, including limited use of facial expression and gestures, lack of reciprocity in conversations, particularly with regards to topic establishment and maintenance, limited social initiation with others, impoverished prosody, lack of cohesion in discourse, and difficulties with the pronouns suggesting referential difficulties. So, what is social pragmatics? Imagine it as the necessary skills to enable the speaker to know when to say what, to whom, and how much to say. A different definition is pragmatics includes an array of skills like cohesive devices, stylistic variation for different listeners, appropriate turn-taking, politeness, and topic introduction, maintenance and change, and as well as nonverbal aspects such as gesture, eye contact, body language, and facial expression. In simplified words, pragmatics studies the creation of societal meaning via certain types of behavioral patterns in communicative interactions. So what considerations should we take? Every person has different needs. Developing preliminary testing tools is crucial to understanding what areas in pragmatics need priority for an individualized approach. Understanding the immediate social reality of the speaker is necessary for the right materials or methods to be developed. Although standardized tests are more time efficient and cost efficient, personalized interviews with the speaker could reveal more and provide more accurate research data. So, is early intervention ideal? Early intervention is essential and can greatly affect the outcome of language acquisition. Early intervention efforts face socio-economic limitations due to the fact that they are not covered by most insurance providers. Although pragmatic use of language is present even at the nonverbal phase and one-word phase, pragmatic impairment in most of the literature dealing with the issue comes later in the child's language development. Early intervention may therefore be neglected by some because there are seemingly more urgent issues to be dealt with at that point, like language acquisition. Okay, so what do we need for making social pragmatic therapy successful? We need to start by optimizing social interactions and social cognition as a means of improving the child's ability to adapt communication skills to interlocutors and to social situations. Communication adaptation, social cognition, all written and spoken language should be chosen according to the child's assessed level of spoken comprehension, and calibrating expectations and demands, stimulating the child with a curriculum attuned with the child's development communication competencies. I know what you're thinking, what else do we need? We need to establishing and monitoring responses. The personnel involved has to be focused on giving contingent examples and on helping children with responses based on their own repertoire, encouraging empathy and understanding emotions, keeping key notes on the emotions the students go through when approaching different situations, and monitoring them to help the children attune their responses to what is expected of them and to depersonalize themselves from the situation. And they also need a flexibility of social scenarios. Okay. So we also need explicit exercises and support in exchange structure, turn taking, topic management, conversation skills, building sequence in narrative, referencing in discourse, cohesion and coherence. So this is what I thought what would be necessary for making pragmatic impairment therapy possible in Puerto Rico. The techniques and methodology for dealing with this problem have to be taken into account along with the child's unique profile. We need to create relatable situations based on the child's immediate reality, considering what type of vocational field the child is interested in, so the PI therapist can provide fictional situations and teach the children about registries that they have to become familiar with in the future. For this program to work in Puerto Rico, parents have to be present. The teachers or speech therapists need someone familiar with the pragmatic impairment that assesses hands-on on a daily basis. The bilingual reality of Puerto Rico has to be considered because this means that a lot more work, because pragmatics apply to both Spanish and English, and so far there are no studies relating to bilingualism, autism, and pragmatic impairment therapy. So now I'm going to talk about the testing tools, intervention, and recommendations and conclusions. A standardized test that samples a range of pragmatic behaviors has been developed, but it's not the ideal. Other areas like sentence length, vocabulary count, conjunctive and cohesion devices, story grammar, and the number of complete episodes have also been taken into account in other test formats. This Walden's 2010 study tries to measure pragmatic impairment using 2 different standardized tests, including the TOPL on children with ASD. It revealed that the children's communication checklist revealed pragmatic impairment better than the TOPL. The children's communication checklist is more of a personalized interview than a standardized test. Pragmatics is defined as context-dependent behavior. Therefore, the rigid structure of formal testing procedures fails to capture flexible adjustment to changing conditions and situations. According to the checklist, these are the traits that are constant in the data, and the research data. Facial expression and gestures, reciprocity in conversations, social initiations, prosody, cohesion in discourse, use of pronouns, inference, and hidden meanings. So, what does an intervention need to be ideal? It has to be made in order for a certain goal to be achieved, and these goals have to be set beforehand. Preliminary testing should give the therapist an idea of what areas need the most attention and how to formulate the target specific goals. Intervention must involve the following considerations. Promoting understanding of the conventions of having a reciprocal conversation, developing insight into conversation rules, and identifying conversational breakdown in others, and self-practice in applying the conversational conventions in speaker listening, turn-taking, introducing a topic, maintaining a topic, ending a topic in conversational exchanges. Improving understanding of presuppositions using role play, discriminating between familiar and unfamiliar topics, identify the other person's knowledge, practicing introduction, and knowing how much information to give. Encouraging equal participation in talk, allowing specific times only for a talk about favorite themes, establishing a visual prompt to remind the child not to allow intrusion of said themes into conversation at other times, and establishing visual cues to define roles. My conclusions are that pragmatic impairment involves much more than not understanding idiomatic expression, and includes the whole set of unwritten rules, constraints, emotions, and intentions in every speech act. Using comic strips, thought clouds, predetermined rules, images, language simplification, naming the intentions of speech acts can benefit children and improve their conversational skills and their understanding of how others feel when engaging in conversation. Establishing a successful program for assessing social pragmatic impairment in children with ASD in Puerto Rico will require customized, detailed, premeditated intervention on the one hand, and awareness of the vagaries of government planning and funding on the other. Thank you.
All right, it's time for questions. We have questions. We're open to questions on any of the first 6 presentations toward post-colonial linguistics, spatial liminalities, variedades en contacto, the position of women in Santeria and traditional Yoruba religions, lenguas en contacto en el Afroatlántico, de las factorías a las plantaciones, and sociopragmatic impairment in children with autism. Questions?
Do you know any chance if all these methodologies are being implemented with public Department of Education so that they can deal effectively with the students and help them learn all these skills?
So far, the studies that I've seen are dealing with small groups of students.
So far?
The studies that I've seen in the literature are dealing with small groups. I haven't seen it implemented in curriculum per se. It's just like small studies with few participants. It hasn't been implemented on a whole curriculum level or district level.
More questions?
Mothers are not the only linguists, says a poet from Trinidad who is very prolific, Jennifer Rahim. And the question is, from the first presentation, we learn from our mothers, and fathers at all included in the training of children to speak. Because if we talk of the matrilineal societies, there were fathers there who also taught the children to respect, to use language that respect their mothers, and so on. So my question is, where is the father as linguist, not the Western father, not the Platonic father, but the celebrated, absent male voice in the presentation?
Okay, good question. Yes, Chomsky doesn't only erase the mother, he also erases the father. So both parents are erased, which means that basically all cultural factors are also erased. Society is erased, so language is considered to be something that's biological, innate. So yes, fathers are erased just as much as mothers. But historically, women have been erased from history, erased from all of how we conceptualize science, much more than men. But in the particular case of language transmission, we have to admit that men play less of a role than women, just because of the fact that women carry the child in their womb for 9 months, and the child is learning language during those 9 months. So no matter what happens afterwards, the mother already has 9 months 9 months ahead of the father in terms of her influence on language. But the father and the rest of society plays an important role. But all of that is erased by Chomsky because of the way that he fails to question the Platonic bases for Western science, and the way that and other elements of Western science, like classical semantic theory, the idea that mathematical logic is the one that we use to reason with, things like that. All of that leads to the erasure of society, including fathers. More questions on any of these presentations?
Okay, I just received a book by a poet, a Cuban poet. It's a children's book of poetry. And I think listening to Sebastian, I understand this child who speaks in the poem suffers from ASD. So I've just forgotten the title of the book, but the child is unable to speak, and the doctors all say that this child will never speak. This child is afraid of words. This child is fearful of words. But the mother buys her a notebook and a pen, and she begins to write. And through the writing process, she develops the ability to speak. So do you think giving the notebook and the pen or a pencil to a child who suffers from ASD can be one of the ways in which they can actually encourage a child to begin to learn to talk? Because if the emphasis is just about verbalizing language, what about writing as a way towards developing some kind of securities that would enable them to speak?
I think writing is a great tool because there's no social anxiety in it. The child is alone with his thoughts and free to express himself. So I think it's a more safe space for the child to develop language. And it would be a great tool for therapy.
More questions? Okay, for Erica and Jean. In terms of the plantation, why do you think linguists in the past have concentrated so much on the plantation and not considered other factors? Like what other situations do we need to consider besides the plantation?
Podría decir que por una parte es el mismo factor que estaba hablando yo al principio, de buscar una sola respuesta para todo. Los lingüistas no se habían abierto a explorar una teoría que abarcara más de una sola factor. Bueno, ese trabajo del 19 factores utiliza datos reales para llegar a una conclusión mucho más real a la situación. ¿Cuál fue la
Sí, tu contestación es muy buena. La otra era, en una de tus diapositivas, había como mención de mujeres embarazadas. Entonces, ¿qué pasaba con ellas?
Bueno, en el momento en que cuando fui a ganar y me dieron el recorrido sobre los castillos, explicaron que las mujeres embarazadas no tenían valor en el mercado porque no eran útiles debido a que estaban en el proceso del embarazo y cuidar a la criatura, parir nada más quitaba tiempo. Así es que eran enviadas a las afueras a que culminaran con el proceso de educación y nutrición del principio del bebé. Algunas de estas mujeres llegaban embarazadas, otras eran embarazadas a través de violaciones. Y pues sencillamente no era un producto del mercado.
Entonces pasaba más tiempo en los castillos o únicamente en términos de situaciones de contacto lingüístico. Entonces se supone que aquellas mujeres entonces hubieran pasado más tiempo en los castillos donde hubieran podido aprender más idiomas.
Sí, más idiomas.
Sí, perfecto.
Muchas mujeres no era solamente una mujer que se enviaba afuera. Podemos considerar que en cada celda habían probablemente 300 mujeres, por lo menos en el mío, este es el caso del mío. El Cape Coast aguantaba mayor cantidad de mujeres y sí, en los dos castillos se daba el mismo proceso. Las sacaban, si había más de una, porque estas mujeres afuera realmente no está escrito en ningún sitio, pero probablemente se encontraban entre ellas. Si eran a causa de violaciones de europeos, pues los hijos, incluyendo, iban a ser hijos mezclados, violados. Y por lo tanto, de alguna forma u otra, iban a tener contacto probablemente con el padre, si le interesaba al hijo, o probablemente con el poder europeo que iba a querer controlar también la casa a esta offspring. Sí, va a tener contacto no solamente con sus parejas afuera, de las mujeres que estaban afuera, de los otros africanos que pudieron haber estado allá afuera por el mercado, el negocio, que estuvieron relacionados con algún tipo de negocio con la factoría, y los habitantes o los mismos europeos que probablemente vivían afuera del castillo.
Está bien. Otra pregunta. Another question?
Maybe just a suggestion. From the papers I've heard this morning, there is a word that keeps coming. Monogenesis. And as a non-linguist, is it possible, because that's the one that is debunked and challenged from all plural identifications, plural genesis and so on. Wilson Harris, the Guyanese theorist and writer, talks of the unfinished genesis. And if language, Chomsky's idea of language as innate, it means there's actually no creativity. You just learn it, and that is it, basically. And this is challenged by Creole genesis and so on. Is there a possibility of using this theory of unfinished genesis, as part of the frame in which to challenge these genesises that have come to instruct the world of linguistic study?
Okay, I guess that's for our first paper.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Well, yes. In other words, it's how language is conceptualized in a Platonic framework. So in a Platonic framework, or in the framework of Western science, the ideal is, what Western science is really aiming at is control. And the only way to completely control something is to kill it. So basically what Bakhtin is saying is that linguists have killed language. And when you kill language, of course, then you can, if once something is killed, then you can precisely say when it began and when it ended. So you can precisely determine its genesis and its terminal point. But if something is living, it's constantly going through, like you said, a continuous genesis. So basically, if we can reconceptualize our way of studying language as something that appreciates its living nature rather than something that seeks to control it and kill it, then I think the whole question of genesis becomes one that becomes much more interesting and much less easy to just pin down. And I think that that's what Joel was getting at. You really have to take into account a lot of different factors. Also, Erica was talking about that as well. So it's a question. It's a way that we do science, I think, and this connects a bit with, I think, with Nelsa's presentation, and maybe could lead to a question that I have for her. In other words, you talk in your work about Claudia von Werlhoff and her idea of alchemy and how the process of alchemy burns and reduces women to their basic elements and then seeks to recompose them. Okay, how do you see that happening in the process of how you get from the traditional religion in Yoruba land to Santeria in the Caribbean? Does the same kind of process happen? In other words, I think in part of your dissertation you talked about that as well, that idea of burning and reducing and pulverizing almost. I think that was the word that you found. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Women in West African culture were independent. They ruled the marketplace. They had all the access to being Oba, which means king or queen. They could have as much amount of money as their savvy business would allow them to have. They were uncontested. They were used to being heard. If something was wrong, they were used to having the Council of Women have to take care of the situation. They were used to being respected their bodies. But when you get to Santeria, because of the Judeo-Christian tradition, where women are minimized, where women are becoming ghosts and taken out from the title to the other presentation. So in that aspect, they had to crush, they had to destroy the will of those women. And they weren't really able to destroy the will completely of women, but of course the whole paraphernalia of the structure of society, politics, and again, I'm not saying enough, the Christian tradition and patriarchy. All of that with economics around them slowly began to suffocate them, just minimizing and using the religion that was their part of the source of strength to work against them. They were not allowed to use the Christian religion in order to have the prestige that they used to have, because it was equality in West African culture. Men and women had equal access to all the different positions. Division of labor was gender, but that doesn't mean, and that did not mean, and still does not mean, that men can overpower women, or they're more prestigious, or that women's work is more prestigious than men. But when they came here, it was the other way around. They were forced into acknowledging the superiority of men, the superiority of the one Christian God over their Christian God. So it was suppressed, and it shows in Santeria where all their access to different positions of leadership and their status in the Bataquis. It was curtailed, it was limited, just to fit the Judeo-Christian traditional mentality and misogynistic values.
Okay, let's give all the speakers another round of applause. We're now going into our second session, which it begins with a presentation. . 。  . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 。 . 。 . 。 。 . 。 。 . 。 。 . 。 。 . 。
。 . 。 . 。
by
Hello, good morning. I'm gonna start now. Okay, are we good sound-wise? Oh, yeah. Okay, starting with Lukumi, Yoruba, Africa, Santeria, and Cuba. Santeria's roots can be traced back to 1850 with the arrival of one of several waves of enslaved Yoruba or Lukumi to Cuba. After of the transatlantic slave trade, they were sent to the western end of the island, resulting in an increase in the already existing cultural differences between the occidental and oriental halves of Cuba. The Yoruba religious practices that they brought to the island became syncretized with Catholicism and other local spiritual traditions to become known as Regla de Ocha or Santeria. Often referred to as a mixture of Yoruba and Catholic religions, it is worth pointing out that Santeria implies more than a combination of the two. In fact, the practice of Santeria can be considered a version of Yoruba religion with a veneer of Catholicism, incorporating Catholic forms, symbols, and rituals of as it sees fit. This type of syncretism and the pluriculturalism and pluri-identification that it implies is a widespread phenomenon across West Africa, where people see religions as not being mutually exclusive, allowing them to practice a number of religious traditions. Yoruba, as a term, refers to an ethnic group of some 50 million people who live mainly in what today is called Western Nigeria and Eastern Benin Republic. This term is also sometimes used to refer to particular subgroups of the enslaved in Cuba, as well as to some of their cultural practices. In Cuba, Yoruba is sometimes used interchangeably with the term Lukumi, apparently derived from the greeting Oluku mi in the Yoruba language, which could be translated as my friend. Yoruba religious traditions are very numerous and diverse, and some varieties of this religion had already undergone a degree of syncretization in Africa with Islam, which has also been widely practiced in Yoruba land for centuries. The Yoruba Orishas are deities with complex personalities who become part of their practitioners' household in Santeria. The term Orisha is interchangeably used with the term Santo in Cuba, which is indicative of how they outwardly assumed a Catholic facade, normally attributed to the need for African religious practices to appear to conform to Christian norms in order to survive in the hostile environment of European colonial society and chattel slavery. The use of Catholic saints to represent the Orisha is logical, since both roughly fulfill the same function as intermediate figures between the human and the divine. So in the eyes of the enslaved, the saints could very well have appeared to be the Europeans' Orishas. In Yoruba land, religion is non-hierarchical and non-dogmatic, which means that the personality, gender, and attributes of each Orisha vary substantially from one community to another. Some of this diversity and indeterminacy has survived in the Americas, but in present-day Santeria, there is a strongly identifiable fundamental personality for each Orisha. Each believer has a particular Orisha who serves as their guardian angel. Believers do not choose their particular Orisha, but instead they are called by their Orisha to be assigned to them through a ceremony in which Orula, the keeper of the oracle of divination, informs each believer's godparent who their Orisha is. Now, it is only fairly recently that the long struggle for the official acknowledgement and appreciation of Afro-Cuban culture has scored any significant and lasting victories. Afro-Cuban musicians have led few opportunities before the Cuban Revolution in 1959, and even thereafter, it took some time before performers came to be accepted as they are today. This has been largely because of a colonial and neo-colonial ideology that sees anything African as antithetical to the hegemonic notions of development, for which we can find documentary evidence in newspapers from at least 1910 onward. Afro-Cuban music and performance rarely featured on radio or television. Restrictions were also placed on literature that focused on Afro-Cuban music. The focus of musical education in Cuba, according to Acosta, is Eurocentric, adopting a colonial gaze whereby material from Europe is seen as more sophisticated than that from the Americas, and whereby elite Eurocentric academic music industry history, completely upstages more inclusive and politically engaged real music history. Now, musicians have resisted official intolerance and persecution by taking bold steps to incorporate more Afro-Cuban religious elements into their work and fewer Eurocentric stylistic changes. They did this by including sacred drumming sequences, Yoruba chants in their entirety, toques or consecrated rhythms, praise songs to Shango, Babalu Aye, Oshun, Optala, Elegua, Ogun, and Ochosi, as well as rezos or non-metrical praise songs over drumming to Yemaya and Shango in their work. But the epicenter of resistance remains at the grassroots level, where practitioners of Afro-Cuban religions have continued their spiritual traditions despite the vagaries of official policy. As Moore explains, every Casa de Santo, every Cabildo, every Abacua Planté represented a grassroots institution affirming the place of African religions within Cuban society. Their members demonstrated the Afro-Cuban community's desire for religious self-determinism and helped create alternate histories and memories that contested official discourse. The official discourse of scientific atheism argued that Afro-Cuban religions were a result of primitive thinking and that Santeros represented an earlier stage of human development that had no place in the new Cuba. At one point, it called for their elimination for the sake of the country's well-being, claiming that the practice of Santeria was a symptom of mental disorder, linking spirit possession to neurosis. Paradoxically, the state also recognized the aesthetic value of the dancing, drumming, and performances associated with Santeria. Therefore, while Santeria could not be accepted or supported as a religion, elements of its practices could be secularized and acknowledged as some idealized or purified form of national folklore. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, a religious boom has ensued, with many Cubans publicly admitting to involvement in spiritual practices, thus rejecting the 25 years of overzealous regulation of spiritual life. In 1991, the government helped to establish a Yoruba cultural society dedicated to the conservation of Santeria-related traditions. That year also witnessed initiates beginning to walk the streets wearing ritual vestments and necklaces that identify them as Santeros. Since 1992 and 1996, religion has become a predominant theme in the dance music repertoire. Currently, state institutions consider all religions national heritage and allow many religious groups to earn their living by performing or teaching their rituals to visitors. There remains, however, much to be done. While literature on Santeria is now also viewed positively, Afro-Cuban religious performance is rarely featured on televisions or on the radio. The music of Yoruba and Congo rituals has not been included in programs of study at national art schools, and there is no initiative in place to perpetuate and disseminate such traditions more widely. From this new environment, this new Cuba, emerges the figure of Daimé Arocena, a young singer from the 10 de Octubre neighborhood in Havana, who is the embodiment of all the elements that can be said to make a Cuban, Cuban. Integrated at an early age into the musical education system on the island, she graduated as a choir conductor, which was not an easy feat because she struggled with a slight angle in her left arm that affected her movements, and at first she stuttered. She quickly progressed, however, and became such a prodigy that she was leading big jazz ensembles at the age of 14. Challenging the masculine stranglehold over jazz, Daimé created a small all-female jazz band called Alami. This was her response to her own question as to why she seemed to be the only woman in the group or on the stage. Alami became a feminine presence within a male-dominated genre. During Alami's performance at the Jazz Plaza Festival in Havana, Jane Bunnett took to the stage with them, soprano saxophone in hand, yelling, "Que vivan las mujeres!" This encounter would transform that group into another called Maqueque, in collaboration with June Bunnett, who had already recorded many albums with the intent to showcase Cuban artists, including Daimé and 4 other female Cuban musicians, as well as other members of Daimé's family. With Daimé, however, she seized the opportunity to give women a space, a presence, an instrument, and a voice to its fullest as she incorporated other contemporary female artists into a genre that had previously avoided precisely because of its male-dominated character. The Daimé struggle has not only involved a confrontation with patriarchal domination, but also a confrontation with economic domination. While she never experienced the strict censure and restrictions that previously defined the musical scene as she grew as a performer, she has faced the increasingly limited space of opportunity for economic advancement encountered by all but the privileged few musicians under the capitalist system that is increasingly defining how music is made by Cubans. Her frustrations on this front nearly led her to leave the island. It was a message from Yemaya that encouraged her to continue performing in Cuba. And she did. When Jane Bunnett began working with her, however, Daimé was able to expand her horizons internationally, with Giles Peterson becoming her mentor and producer. In fact, Daimé was widely recognized overseas long before Cuba realized the value of the gem that it had been refining over the years. Now, utilizing her mastery of pure jazz improvisation, Daimé's performance seems to weave together a discourse whose textual threads challenge all preconceived notions of women, jazz, Cuba, Afro-Cuban identities, and the Santeria. This is evidenced in the title of her newest album, Cubafonia, which is an allusion to Sinfonia in Cuba, the sounds of Cuba, which has been articulating since her very first performance, in the hope of connecting all of these elements that she considers part of her identities, as well as in the hopes of rescuing them from prejudice, commercialization, and co-optation. Santeria is present in many, if not all, elements of Daimé's performance, where she typically appears barefoot in traditional white garb and a headdress that is a statement of religious commitment. She begins every session with chants dedicated to Yemaya, her Orisha, and Oshun. During the performance, she often kneels in mid-chant as a devotee, invoking the deities and speaking with the power of their ashe. In a 2015 interview with Havana Cultura, she said that she does not feel it is herself that performs, perhaps alluding to the ritual possession that is manifested through Santeria dance rituals. Now equipped with a repertoire from Cubafonia, she includes the piece Elegua from that album in the introductory segment of most of her concerts. With her playful aura, it seems only fitting that she invokes the trickster god who guards the crossroads with Yoruba or Lukumishans. La Rumba Me Llamo Yo explores her courageous embrace of her Afro-Cuban origins and all that this entails. Following the lead of other Afro-Cuban musicians, she shies from confronting the racial question by using conventional confrontational politics, preferring instead to do so through recounting personal but powerful experiences and stories. Clark proposes new perspectives of women in Santeria, in which the religion actually embodies a feminist discourse that recenters women in its practice and beliefs. By back-translating Afro-Cuban terminology into the relatively ungendered Yoruba language, the strict gendering that the Orisha and Afro-Cuban religious practice have undergone in America begins to give way to the diversity and transgressive gender verting that typifies the Orisha and their worship in Yoruba land. This is an important part of what Daimé channels in her performances, in integrating her performances of life in Cuba. In the midst of a celebration of heritage chants and laughter, Daimé brings a humanity and presence to the genre that feels genuine and authentic, performing a tribute each time she sings, both to her Orishas and to her Cuba. So, thank you.
Okay, our next presentation is by Michelle Ramos Rodriguez and Lilibet Shields Cruz. It's called Why Don't You Let Yourself Just Be Whoever You Are? Identity and Trauma in Steven Universe.
Para avanzar la diapositiva aquí, y eso es para eso para la audiencia virtual, eso para la audiencia presencial, y por favor no que no toquen eso, pero tienen que proyectarse.
Good morning. The title of our presentation is Why Don't You Let Yourself Just Be Whoever You Are? Identity and Trauma in Steven Universe. Steven Universe was created by Rebecca Sugar, the first independently create, this is the first woman to independently create a program for Cartoon Network. It is the story of a young boy, Steven, and his three gem guardians, Pearl, Garnet, and Amethyst, in the search for their identities and purpose as protectors of the earth. The program has been recognized for its portrayal of non-heteronormative relationships and diverse cast. The story takes place on an alternate Earth that was colonized by an alien race known as the Gems, who hail from a planet known as Homeworld. Earth gained its freedom after humans united with rebel Gems to fight for their independence 5,300 years prior to the events of the series. At the beginning of the story, only 3 Gems are alive, and they are searching for and defending any threat to humanity and Earth.
Gems possess a body of compressed light energy that behaves as if it were solid matter. If this body is injured, they will retreat into their gemstone and reform. The only way to kill a gem is to shatter the stone. Gem society is ruled by something known as the Diamond Authority. All gems have a role that they are created for, and different gems have varying degrees of freedom and free will. Pearls are viewed by other gems as possessions because their primary role is to be the personal slaves of the diamonds and the aristocratic gems. Pearls use their gemstones to create holograms and store objects. The first character we're going to be speaking about today is Pearl. Pearl belongs to Rose Quartz, who sets her free after the war but continues to serve a leadership role in her life. She is often unaware of human social conventions, and out of all the gems, she is the least adjusted to human life. She has low self-esteem and feels lost, meaningless, and lacking value without someone to order her or for her to serve. After Rose Quartz's death, she fills the void by attempting to serve Stephen in the same way that she served his mother. So the first time that we're really made aware of Pearl's trauma is in the episode Sworn to the Sword, when she starts training a young girl named Connie. She teaches Connie how to fight, and she also teaches Connie that she is valueless, and that the only way for her to gain value is to sacrifice herself for Stephen, the same way that she sacrifices herself for Rose Quartz. Here we see what Freire argues in his Pedagogy of the Oppressed, and I quote, "The oppressed will merely imagine they have reached power," end of quote. In their search for freedom, there is a tendency for the oppressed to become the oppressor. Pearl feels that she has gained power because she can fight and she can speak for herself, things that she couldn't do before. However, she is still being subjugated by the mentality of the colonizers, and thus she is oppressing Connie the same way that she has been oppressed. We continue to see this when she confronts the past in the song It's Over, Isn't It? She once again talks about her imagined power, her imagined ability, but she also refers to how she believes that she cannot question Rose and that she doesn't have the right to explore other avenues. In this episode, she is, for the first time, confronting those psychological dominations that are on her. And as Fanon says, this is the only way for her to truly become free and become liberated, to confront these psychological dominations and how they affect herself and her relationship with others. In this episode, she addresses how it affects her relationship with Greg and with Stephen. Now, a big moment for Pearl is when she, upon confronting Garnet, finally out loud expresses how she feels about herself. And she states that she is worthless, that she is valueless, and Garnet retorts, and she says that she does have value, that she is important, but that she needs to give herself value. Nobody can validate her. That's something that she needs to do on her own. And when she is confronted with the other for the first time, which is in the form of Peridot, who hails from Homeworld and begins to treat her the way she would be treated on Homeworld, as an object, as worthless, as someone who is not worthy of their own identity, she does acknowledge that she is a Pearl, but she no longer associates it with all these roles that want to be imposed on her. She recognizes that she's a Pearl, but she says that she has her own value and that she is of importance as well. And finally, when we can really see Pearl begin to heal is when she is finally able to verbalize her trauma through the final order that was given to her by her master. As stated by Abigail Ward in her paper, Understanding Postcolonial Traumas, and I quote, "It is necessary for trauma to be heard in order for the victim to work through the traumatic experience. Yet expressing traumatic events is often difficult, painful, and halted by the limits of language to articulate trauma." End of quote. Pearl, throughout the series, struggles multiple times to finally express what has occurred to her. She often covers her mouth, cries, and cannot express what is occurring. Like Ward says, she finds another way to express this because language is lacking, and she uses her gem to bring Stephen into her unconscious and show him the events of the memory that took place, what happened to her originally through her trauma. And it is this way that she is finally able to articulate how she feels, what happens to her, and she is finally able to begin truly healing from the trauma that she has experienced.
The second character we're going to talk about today is Amethyst. She is the youngest gem. She sleeps, eats, and interacts the most with the humans in Beach City. She has a childish personality, often pulling pranks, acting impulsively, and changing her physical form. Amethyst is the lost product of the gem war. Nevertheless, she never fought in it and has only heard the stories from other gems. During the course of the show, Amethyst has two identity crises, one caused by family expectations and another by the socio-political structure of the gems. When Amethyst's identity is first addressed, they talked about the kindergarten. This is the place where gems are grown. What happens is that when the minerals of some part of the Earth's soil are perfect to grow gems, but they leave it barren after the process is done, and since it drains its life force. This resembles the plantation system in the Caribbean, because since the cultivation of sugarcane changed the Caribbean ecosystem. Rapid deforestation occurred to have more land for cultivation, and this led to soil depletion, landslides, erosion, decreases in level of moisture and rainfall, and loss of fertility. When Pearl vaguely describes this, she says gems tried to do something very bad. It was something that would have damaged the earth. When this is said, the frame is changed to Amethyst's face. She is, to some extent, mad. Her expression is not satisfied with Pearl's description. In this case, she is feeling attacked because the way Pearl describes the place where she was born is negatively, and thus, by extension, is saying something bad about her. Later on in the same episode, Amethyst runs with Steven, and she says, I wish that I could say that there's no better place than home, but home's a place that I have never known. So in this case, we see that she finds herself in this space of unknownness and what constitutes her identity. When she later confronts Pearl, she uses words like parasites, embarrassment to describe herself. She says that she never asked to be made. In this case, we see that to some extent, she is suffering from transgenerational trauma because Pearl's own experience after the war is affecting her perceptions of the world. And by extension, because Amethyst grew up with Pearl, it is also affecting her constitution of her identity. Even though by the end of the episode, we can see her coming to terms with her identity, especially because Pearl lets her know that she is the best thing that came out of this war, she is still coming to terms with it when she is exposed to the other. We see her later on encounter Peridot and Jasper. They let her know who she was supposed to be. She was supposed to be huge, a loyal soldier, twice her size, broad-shouldered, intimidating. But because she is none of these things, Jasper describes her as a joke. This is the otherness all over again. Her role has been assigned by the colonial power since she does not comply with the established expectations, she's viewed as a lesser gem. We can see that after this encounter, her whole physicality changed. She does not longer have the laid-back expressions that she had before. She is mad, she is angry, she is obsessed with finding Jasper. And it is only when Steven tells her that she needs to stop searching for her identity in Jasper that she starts to come to terms with her own identity, because she cannot identify with something that she was never a part of. As we know, the Caribbean dilemma has been how to reconstruct an identity, avoiding a representation and definition imposed from the other, and thus this is Mirror and Amethyst's search for her identity. She looks for what feels right about her identity, and in this case, Erling perfectly describes who she is. Thank you.
Next, we have a presentation we actually two PowerPoints. I don't know which one you would like us to project. Is it this one? Is this the one you want to work from? Okay, great. Okay, so basically this presentation is by the research crew, as represented by Javier Perez Rosario, Natalie Rivera Medina, Yadriel Morales Cuevas, Aníbal Díaz González, Andrea Torres, Jaisa Correa Rodríguez, Katia Rivera Rivera, Ezequiel Campos Olmo, Rafael Juarbe Acosta, Miguel Ruiz Santiago, Pablo Rodríguez Alberti, Ferdinand Álvarez, Sabrina Sánchez, Axel Seno Colón, Javier Pérez Lafont, Emmanuel Morales Butler, Josef Reyes Morales, Lorena Román Aulet, Mohammad Mansara Romero, and Yasmin Sanchez Reyes, all from the University of Puerto Rico, Utuado. They, I think, are preparing something multimedia for us. In any case, this is the presentation here, and I'll hand it over to the research crew. Let's give them a hand.
Eso para la presencial.
Ok.
Por no tocar este.
Ok, perdón.
Para avanzar la diapositiva se usa este.
Ok, gracias. Muy amable. Muy buenos días. Somos la Universidad de Puerto Rico en Utuado. Somos Ciencias Sociales, Pedagogía, Lenguaje, Humanidades, Empresas, Ciencias Naturales, Tecnología Agrícola, Tecnología de Alimentos, Agricultura. Somos vida, somos la montaña.
Hi. Do I say that? My name is Aníbal Díaz. I am from the University of Utuado. I am the taker of this picture, and I am here to tell a story. The first time I came to Utuado, the first time I woke up in Utuado, was the first time I woke up without parents. I was alone, and I was kind of alienated. I didn't expect to look out the window and see myself being blinded by the mist. I didn't expect the cold to challenge my blanket, and I didn't expect a lot of things. But I had paperwork to do, so I got up, got myself together, and went to the university. What I didn't expect was that I went 2 hours earlier before the offices even opened. So I had a lot of time. I found the bench. I sat down and I looked at this view. I took a moment of reflection. I wanted to take a picture, but something told me that if I have enough time to enjoy something, then I should do it. So I did.
Have you ever wondered why the Taino Indians made markings on rocks? In my opinion, they wanted to tell us something, to tell their story. This is what we have left of them, and we need to protect it. Because it's part of our history, culture, and most importantly, a part of us. The way we want to conserve and protect our Taino culture in UPR is by strengthening the academic program. With the help of Dr. Renier Rodriguez, who has found archaeological treasures in the mountains, we would like to create an articulated transfer with Piedras in archaeology, so we can conserve and protect our heritage. This will offer a better understanding of Taino Indians in Utuado, and you will be able to come face to face with their legacy. So I invite you all to come to UPR to experience a close encounter with nature and what the Tainos left us to discover.
Utuado is its own world. Our own university has 2 bodies of water and its good share of wilderness. If you know where to go, you could have the best camping, or the best picnic, or a day in a river that you've never seen before. I try my best to explore as much as I can, but there's more where that came from, and I'm in no rush.
Voy rumbo a la montaña, donde cae la lluvia y el coquí arrulla mi dormir. Utuado, ciudad del vivir, ciudad de ríos, tradición que se olvida, la chágara alimentó a jibaritos de aquí.
Lo que acabo de decir es que mi nombre es Zacarías Galarza Torres, y le vengo a hablar de lenguaje de señas. Y la importancia del lenguaje de señas es que realmente la necesitábamos hoy en Puerto Rico y en cualquier parte del mundo, ya que el lenguaje es muy utilizado, no importa sea sordo o sea mudo, o que conozca a alguien más por ahí siendo sordo. Lo que realmente el mensaje es que cualquiera puede perder la audición de cualquier tipo de razón, y lo que realmente necesitamos es por lo menos saber el lenguaje básico de la seña. Lo cual yo quise traer este mensaje es que mi madre es sorda y yo llevo con ella toda mi vida aprendiendo lenguaje. Cada día que la veo siempre aprendo algo nuevo, que tampoco es que sé todo el lenguaje. Y traigo esto aquí por la simple razón de que cualquiera se puede topar con un sordo o un mudo que simplemente no sepa expresarse o no sepa dirigirse hacia las personas por el simple hecho de que no tenga la lengua para poder comunicarse. Y pues, como un ejemplo que siempre estuve estableciendo, es que si uno es policía o bombero o lo que sea, se topa con un sordo, ¿cómo le va a decir, tiene esta multa por tal razón, o tiene un par de cositas? Y pues esa es la real importancia del lenguaje de señas. Muchas gracias.
What's sustainable agriculture? Somebody knows? Well, the easiest way for me to explain it to you is that it's just a form of agriculture where we produce fresh and healthy food, preserving the nutrients in the soil for our future generations to enjoy them as well. UPR is just what we need to prepare ourselves to ensure that our future economy, our health, and our autonomy. Thank you.
Pues, buenos días, yo soy Andrea Torres y les voy a hablar un poco sobre la Noche de Galería. Esto es una actividad que ya llevamos haciendo 2 meses en la universidad y la creó el Consejo de Estudiantes. La idea de esta actividad es que muchos estudiantes vienen, toman las clases, si tienen que hacer un trabajo lo hacen y se van. La universidad se queda vacía hasta el próximo día. Es una idea de nosotros crear un espacio para, como comunidad, compartir y sacar un espacio para llegar a conocernos. Mucha gente está en la universidad y no se conocen. En esta actividad tenemos artesanía de los mismos estudiantes y de personas que vienen de afuera. Pegamos carteles y traemos pintura para que la gente escriba un mensaje positivo de la UPRU. Traemos artistas. Esta semana fue la segunda noche de galería y vino Calma Carmona y dio una presentación y siempre intentamos traer varios artistas locales a que presenten. Además de eso también tenemos presentaciones del grupo de teatro, del grupo de coro y de diferentes profesores que promueven la actividad y mandan a sus estudiantes a que preparen algo. Y nada, si algún día están por Utuado y se dan la vuelta, pues espero que algún día vengan a una noche de galería.
Good morning. When I saw that the annual Coloquio de la Mujer theme was going to be female artists, I thought it would be the perfect time to participate in something that I'm passionate about, art and female empowerment. I wanted to contribute to the art exhibition, but the organizer told me that it was impossible since it was already full 1 year in advance. I talked about it to my lovely professor, Jasmine, and she encouraged me and helped me through with the organization with like the event, which is like feminist art exhibition. My friend Andrea, which is like right somewhere, guided me step by step through the process. The final day came and the event was a success. We had live music, performances, poets, all in honor of Women's Day. Thanks to Jasmine, Andrea, and all the students that participated with their artworks. This is what I did for the art exhibition.
Buenos días, mi nombre es Yeisa Correa. En la montaña también hacemos arte. Este semestre presentamos la obra Troyanas de Eurípides, en este caso la versión del gran director Vicente Castro, a quien tenemos el placer de tener como profesor de Humanidades y Teatro en nuestro recinto. Esta magnífica presentación se hizo con el fin de llevar un mensaje contra la esclavitud y el maltrato a la mujer, también con el fin de promover el teatro en la montaña. En UPR-RP también contamos con la banda universitaria, a la cual se le ha llamado banda plena, donde los ritmos son en batucada, banda y plena. En el mismo hay bailarinas de bomba, estudiantes percusionistas, zanqueros y cabezudos, todos dirigidos por el gran maestro Gillo González. Este semestre hemos estado presentando la historia de la mujer en la bomba, ya que en el pasado la mujer solo podía tocar la maraca y bailar. Y como poco a poco esto fue cambiando, cuando un día una mujer decidió sentarse en un barril y comenzar a tocar sin miedo. Con el tiempo la mujer tomó iniciativa y se integró a la bomba. En la montaña hay arte, hay bomba y mantenemos viva nuestra cultura.
Buenos días, yo soy Javier Pérez Lafón, profesor de la UPR de Utuado por 21 años. La Universidad de Puerto Rico en Utuado se distingue de todas las universidades de la UPR a nivel sistémico, que produce un profesional único y diferente a cualquier otro, que son los tecnólogos agrícolas. ¿Qué es un tecnólogo agrícola? Es un especialista en la producción, operación y mercadeo de productos agropecuarios. A diferencia del recinto de Mayagüez, en el Colegio de Ciencias Agrícolas, que preparan agrónomos, que son personas que orientan a los agricultores a cómo trabajar las fincas, nosotros preparamos ese productor especializado que necesita el país para renovar la cartilla de agricultores y para asegurar la seguridad alimentaria. Tenemos un proyecto de incubadora de agroempresas que estamos motivando a nuestros estudiantes a que emprendan en la agricultura, porque la agricultura es una actividad comercial muy lucrativa. Y a través del proyecto Génesis Agroempresarial, nuestros estudiantes se preparan a través de un curso, que es el de Economía Agrícola que nosotros ofrecemos, y nuestros estudiantes desconocen al principio de la clase qué es lo que van a hacer, lo descubren en el proceso. Aquí tengo dos estudiantes que han estado conmigo, Sebastián y Elka, que están con nosotros. Y lo importante de todo esto es que nuestros estudiantes tienen que resolver un problema. El problema es el siguiente. Ellos tienen que utilizar materia prima proveniente de la agricultura del país y desarrollar una propuesta de valor utilizando ese producto que resuelva un problema. Una vez desarrolla esa propuesta de valor, tiene que asignarle un precio. Desarrollar una campaña de promoción a través de los medios de comunicaciones y posteriormente vender el producto al mercado en un semestre. Por lo tanto, nosotros trabajamos con días. Así que el esfuerzo es intenso y para que tenga una idea de la acumulación de trabajo que nosotros hemos tenido este semestre, nosotros hemos acumulado sobre 200 horas de trabajo, más de 20 actividades a través de toda la isla. Aquí ustedes pueden ver a través de la actividad cumbre que nosotros desarrollamos todos los años, el Festival Tierra Adentro, nuestros estudiantes tienen la oportunidad de presentar sus productos en un ambiente real con consumidores reales. Por lo tanto, nuestros estudiantes realmente salen con experiencia real, que cuando van al mercado realmente son personas experimentadas. Y obviamente en la foto que tenemos a la mano derecha donde dice empresarismo, nuestros estudiantes van a diferentes medios de comunicación e inclusive hemos ido a los periódicos. Ese es un reportaje que salió el semestre pasado en el mes de diciembre, donde se destaca la labor agroempresarial que se desarrolla en la UPR de Utuado, desde los programas de grado asociado y el bachillerato en agricultura sustentable, que es único en Puerto Rico y el Caribe. Dentro del fruto de ese proceso del desarrollo de productos, ustedes pueden visualizar algunos ejemplares, como por ejemplo coquito. En este año desarrollamos un coquito con diferentes sabores. ¿Qué les parece un coquito de brazo gitano? Un coquito de mango, porque queremos sacar el coquito de las Navidades para que sea una bebida del año entero. También tenemos una variedad de mermelada única. ¿Qué les parece la alternativa de una mermelada de batata y guineo? Pues nosotros la tuvimos ya y es un producto desarrollado que si ustedes quieren tener la oportunidad, eventualmente nosotros lo estamos presentando y el próximo fin de semana vamos a estar apoyando a otro recinto hermano, la UPR de Ponce, en su feria Atabey, en su cuarta edición. Muchos de nuestros productos van a estar allí presentes y el producto que está en la mano derecha es un mantecado de aguacate. Extraordinario. Si no lo ha probado, vaya al Festival Tierra Adentro, no se va a arrepentir. Otras muestras de nuestros productos: champú de café y acondicionador de café. Extraordinario. Tenemos también otras alternativas como lo es la mermelada de mango y cilantro. Tuvimos el desarrollo de jabones artesanales y un tipo de pastel diferente que en vez de utilizar la hoja de plátano para enrollar el pastel, utilizamos el repollo. Así que desarrollamos un producto con basura cero porque nos consumimos el producto completo. Así que vale mucho la pena. Y a diferencia del pastel tradicional, que normalmente se hierve, este es guisado. Este proyecto también lo auspicia el Departamento de Tecnología Agrícola, lo dirige la doctora Marisol Dávila, es el proyecto de huertos escolares, ese es el impacto de nuestro recinto, que lleva la enseñanza de la agricultura sustentable a la práctica. Y nosotros estamos penetrando en las diferentes escuelas a nivel elemental en los municipios de Utuado y Adjuntas. Tenemos 13 escuelas en Utuado, 2 en Adjuntas, y les enseñamos a los niños la cultura del agro, pero desde una perspectiva sustentable, consona con el medio ambiente, responsablemente social y que sea viable económicamente. Nuestros estudiantes nos escatiman en esfuerzos. Ellos desarrollan sus productos de su fondo, pero a la misma vez que les mencionamos que hacíamos la promoción, aquí tienen que ellos, además de recibir la información teórica, lo hacen en la práctica. Y tenemos evidencia de ello. Esa es una presentación que tuvimos este semestre en la en WPAB en Ponce y en el periódico Metro acá en la zona metropolitana. También nosotros hemos tenido proyectos de concientización social y de sustentabilidad en cuanto a la limpieza de cauces de río, y nuestro evento más importante, el evento cumbre de nuestro recinto, que es el Festival Tierra Adentro, que este año tuvimos nuestra 34ª edición. Así que si usted no ha ido al Festival Tierra Adentro y quiere conocer el quehacer universitario de nuestro recinto, qué mejor que nos visite para esa fecha. Así que vamos a finalizar. Somos la Universidad de Puerto Rico en Utuado. Somos la montaña. 11 recintos, una 11 recintos. 11 recintos. Gracias.
Okay, we have time for some questions. We had 3 presentations there. Anybody have some questions on the floor? Oh, okay. So we have an extra treat. Okay, we have an extra presentation. And this one is about a special project that has to do with one of the special animals found here in Puerto Rico. And so I'm just going to give our presenter a chance to talk about it. I'm going to put her slides on the screen now. Okay, so Natalie Rivera Medina is going to talk about la chágara como parte del patrimonio caribeño.
Buenos días, gracias por recibirnos.
Y eso es para la audiencia virtual, y eso es para la audiencia presencial.
Gracias.
Pero que no toquen eso porque, bueno, hacemos un ruido. Eso es para avanzar.
Gracias. Buenos días, gracias por recibirnos. Mis compañeros son Jaisha Allende y Axel Seno Colón, y yo soy Natalie Rivera, investigadora principal. Estaremos presentando la chágara como parte del patrimonio caribeño. Sí, patrimonio, porque es nuestra herencia, nuestro pasado, nuestros ancestros, y debe ser transmitida a las generaciones presentes. Se cuenta que los pueblos que vivían en la montaña, cerca de los cuerpos de agua, pescaban para subsistir familias grandes. ¿Y cómo lo sé? Porque esa también es mi familia. Ese es mi abuelo y tiene una bruquena. La pescaba con sus manos y la foto es alrededor de 1981. Y acá hay un macrobrachium y es un tipo de camarón que también los pescaban mis abuelos. Acá hacemos una comparación entre un langostino y un camarón. Pues como verán, las diferencias son algo ambiguas. Así que una chágara es difícil de categorizar.
Buenos días. En el recinto se repartió una encuesta en la que participaron 50 estudiantes. 43 dijeron que ellos nunca habían probado una chágara y 7 dijeron que sí. Los que dijeron que sí eran o de Utuado o de pueblos adyacentes tales como Orocovi o Arecibo. Atialatnipes, que ahí está escrito mal sin querer, es un camarón anfídromo que es de agua dulce y viene de la familia Atidae. Se conoce como guábara en el este, se conoce como gata o gato en el centro de la isla y se conoce más comúnmente como una chágara, que su origen es indígena y pues se conoce según su región o jerga, como le quieran decir.
Pues nosotros decidimos en busca de las chágaras, decidimos ir para diferentes tipos de cuerpos de agua alrededor de Utuado, que uno de ellos sería el río Guanico, después sería el río Limón, los charcos Los Morones y el río Arenas y también el río Cercadillo, que lamentablemente está erosionado, y el río Arenas se encuentra dentro del recinto de Utuado. Y las únicas amenazas que sufren estos animales de los ríos son que la gente está construyendo las represas y eso impide que vayan directamente hacia el mar. También sufre la contaminación y también la pesca desconsiderada con usos químicos para quitar la oxigenación al agua y que suban animales a la superficie. Pues en Utuado se empezó a hacer limpiezas de río, que es un buen comienzo para poder mantener la belleza y también poder proteger los animales que dependen de ese mismo río.
En conclusión, fue difícil encontrar chágaras. Fuimos al río Tanamá, que se conecta al río Grande de Arecibo, y ahí conseguí el ejemplar que está por allá. Creo que es importante preservar esta especie, ya que es símbolo y gran parte de la historia de Puerto Rico, y no debemos olvidarla. Muchas gracias.
Okay, now it's time for questions. Let's give all the presenters another round of applause. Okay, questions on any of those 4 presentations?
I just want to thank the students and professors from the University for showcasing what multidisciplinary approach to presentations are. Their presentation as the kind of showed UPR-RP presenters that you don't have to constantly pigeonhole and claim our territories. So I want to thank them for opening our eyes to how we can collaborate on these different disciplines and do one presentation. Thank you.
Okay, so we had 4 presentations. We had Jamin Award. We had Poem, Generational Trauma, Identity, Masters in Slavery in Steven Universe. And then we had 2 from Utuado, 1 community initiative to preserve and expand La Universidad de la Montaña. And then we had a special one on La Chágara by Natalie Rivera Medina and her 2 colleagues. So any questions on any of those presentations? Yes, you have one here.
También dirigido al recinto de Utuado. Nada, quiero agradecerles cómo demostraron una vez más toda la capacidad de creatividad, de productividad, el talento y el deseo de echar para adelante y de crear cosas nuevas que nos sirvan a todos, que tenemos, ¿verdad? Los seres humanos y en especial aquí ahora en Puerto Rico. Gracias nuevamente.
Sí, para la presentación de Steven Universe, yo tengo que admitir, yo no conozco mucho del show realmente, pero ¿cómo, basado en todo lo que acaban de exponer hoy, ¿cómo ustedes dirían que el show abarca relaciones de, por ejemplo, sexualidad o identidad sexual también y conexión con el trauma y con la curación? ¿Cómo dirían que el programa brega con su asunto?
El programa agrega altamente con todas las cosas relacionadas con la sexualidad, la identidad. En el programa hay un concepto que se llama fusion, en el cual dos gemas se unen y se convierten en una, y eso se describe como una relación, y dentro del programa hay dos fusions que se da mucho énfasis, que es el de Garnet, que es uno saludable, y uno que se llama Malachi, que es una fusión entre un personaje que se llama Dannabang y Jasper, el que vimos que confrontó a Amethyst. Y esa relación es bien violenta, y ahí se ve mucho el tema de las relaciones, la violencia de parejas y también el PTSD, porque una de las personas que está envuelta en esa relación, ella ha sido arrestada y capturada por milenios, y ella está constantemente pasando de una persona a ser prisionera de otra persona y de otra persona, y finalmente ella decide: yo voy a hacerte a ti mi prisionero, yo no voy a seguir siendo oprimida por otras personas, yo voy a oprimir. Y cuando ella por fin sale de esa relación negativa con Jasper, ella expresa que ella atacaba a Jasper y le hacía daño y disfrutaba de ese daño que ella le hacía, y empieza a entonces trabajar con eso de lo que ella hizo y qué quiere decir eso sobre ella como persona.
Además, hay los dos personajes que se pusieron para crear la partner, que es Sapphire y Ruby. Esos dos personajes no están supuestos a estar juntos, porque Sapphire está en una posición más alta versus Ruby, que es un personaje que simplemente está ahí para ser un soldado. ¿Qué pasa? Que cuando ellas se fusionan, crean algo que no está supuesto a pasar y las juzgan, y ellas deciden irse de ese sistema político para poder ser quienes ellas quieren ser. Ruby es un personaje un poco más masculino, y en uno de los episodios más recientes, cuando hacen una boda de los dos personajes, revierten los roles, donde Sapphire está vestida como hombre y Ruby está vestida como mujer, para que la gente no dijera que ese personaje no estaba tratando de interpretar una relación de dos mujeres, que siempre fue un problema al principio.
I have a question for Yanis. The particular singer that you looked at, does you think that she's individual phenomenon, or do you think that there'll be others like her? Others like her, both in terms of women in jazz, also in terms of people who are able to incorporate more fully something into their work.
I think her purpose is actually to get more people to follow what she's doing, because her whole message is to share her experiences, her culture, her religion, and her practices with others, and teach them what it really means, not the misconceptions that people have from the outside. And I know there is another group I heard about, I don't remember the name at the moment, but they follow the same idea, but they all speak from the diaspora, which is brings the diaspora into question. Because Inez Moreno from Cuba, and she continues to perform in Cuba and now internationally. But the others, I really can't remember the moment, speak from, they grew up, they started their childhood, they spent in Cuba, and then I think they're in London, if I'm not mistaken, but they made their call back to Cuba. So I feel that now that there's more space for them to perform what they want to, although they'll have to maneuver the economic situation, there is more liberty for them to express. It's just the means. So I feel like she will sort of train in that sense to continue expressing themselves.
Okay, I think that it's time for the person who's doing all the hard work with the the technical person to go for lunch. Is that correct? Yes. So please feel free to go for lunch. We're going to continue our dialogue here, but please, we really let's give them a clap for. So this event is being broadcast all over the world, so there are tens of thousands of people watching you as you're presenting today. So even though there's a smaller audience here, there's a much larger audience out there. But we just want to give a big thank you to the technical group, and we don't want to abuse them, which means that when it's time for them to have lunch, they have to have lunch. We will be here watching your equipment, don't worry, and go ahead and take a well-deserved break. But meanwhile, let's continue our dialogue here. I want to ask you people in the University of Puerto Rico and Kuwabong, what can we be doing here in Rio Piedras actually to doing a better job to connect with our community? Because I think you're doing a much better job than we are. So have you got any suggestions for us?
El detalle de nosotros es que hacemos las cosas de corazón. Tenemos un compromiso patriótico. Sabemos que la situación del país es muy difícil y hay un principio económico que dice que para poder mover la rueda económica tienes que producir para eventualmente intercambiar y consumir. Lo que ha sucedido en nuestro país históricamente es que esa fase de producción no se ha activado. Nosotros en la Universidad de Puerto Rico, Recinto, pretendemos exactamente hacer eso, mover esa rueda económica, reconociendo que la agricultura es una actividad demasiado importante que ha sido soslayada por años. Y eso ha provocado que gran parte de la riqueza de Puerto Rico se pierda porque estamos comprando bienes y servicios al mundo entero, y en estos momentos del 100% de los alimentos que consumimos en Puerto Rico, aproximadamente un 85% es importado. Para que las personas tengan una idea de la importancia del sector en Puerto Rico, se mueve desde la perspectiva económica aproximadamente $9,000 millones al año en el área de alimentos y en el área de agricultura. Ambos sectores aportan más al Producto Interno Bruto que el turismo, pero lamentablemente la política pública no le ha dado la importancia. Es bien crítico que en un lugar como el recinto de Río Piedras, en estas mismas facilidades y en la misma dinámica de la ciencia social, se hable más de agricultura y se hable también de la desigualdad que hay en este país, porque lamentablemente la riqueza se ha mantenido en la costa y la montaña vive una realidad totalmente diferente a la costa. Nosotros no sé si aquí en el recinto de Río Piedras se está viviendo esta situación, pero nosotros tenemos estudiantes en la montaña que no te comen las 3 comidas, que nos están llegando con hambre. Entonces, esto es una realidad del país. A mí me duele como profesor. Por lo tanto, yo veo a mis estudiantes no solamente como estudiantes, son mis hijos. Por lo tanto, yo tomo cuidado de ellos y voy más allá. Y yo creo que lo que nos ha faltado a Puerto Rico es dejar de comportarnos de manera ordinaria y empezar a hacer cosas extra para llegar a lo extraordinario. Y esa sería la diferencia que nosotros pudiéramos marcar. Y es lo que nosotros exhortamos desde la montaña a nuestros hermanos de Río Piedras.
Un aplauso para el
In the more social, you were in the more social gathering aspect. Usuado, what they usually do is that we have like multiple events at the same time. So in the email that we send, you come here to buy stuff, you come here to see theater, you come here to see art, and you come here to even show your own stuff, because we have sometimes open mics where students come do their music or poetry. My favorite actually. I'm from the metro area, and I went there,
And if there was a recommendation was for your social gatherings, it would be to bring more stuff at the same time. Make it on a cycle of events. Include teatro, choir. I saw once a very there was like a dragon once here. That sort of stuff where multicultural things happen, movies. If you could bring all that to one event, I think that would bring more people in the community. We have this time for just communication instead of the constant stress and pressure that the university normally brings about. Thank you.
Another clap. So, in one of the presentations earlier this morning, Dr. Molino said that she identified how in the passage of women from West Africa to the Caribbean, enslaved women, there was an attempt to suppress their power, to make women who were very powerful in West Africa feel like they had no power here in the Caribbean. But those women, although that attempt was made, those women resisted. Okay, and part of that resistance, although she didn't mention it, she's mentioned it elsewhere. Those women actually recreated West African markets in the Caribbean. So what I hear you saying is something like that, because in a West African market, it's not just about selling things. There's all kinds of stuff going on. There are people singing, there are people doing cultural things, there are people, all kinds of different things are happening. So maybe when you think about events, you should be thinking more in that West African way. Whereas when you put something together, it's a place to buy and sell, but it's also a place to hear poetry, it's also a place to sing, it might be a place to dance, a place to do all kinds of things, visual arts, a whole range of things. So that sounds like a really good idea. Más preguntas. How about anybody else from Rio Piedras or other campuses? What could you be doing more in line with what's going on in Untitled? Yes, anybody from Rio Piedras or other campuses that have any other ideas? Because I think Untitled has given us a challenge now.
I think for the next Caribe Plurilingüe, we should try to reach out, possibly, to other departments, even if it's just within Humanidades and Radas, because I know there's a school of drama. There is there are poetry groups that meet to write poetry, whether they cannot just come and present poetry rather than academic. And I think that will also, or do a drama script, something like that, 10-minute performance. So that will also then actually show that the academic environment involves all these rather than citing professors and their works.
I think that one of the things that
and food.
And food, yeah, definitely food. But I think that one of the things that was supposed to happen here was that Professor Perez, yes, Professor Perez Lafon. You were supposed to bring things to sell, but because the event was canceled in April, you weren't able to do it, weren't able to organize it, and also because of the bureaucracy here at the University of Puerto Rico, Rio Piedras, you couldn't get the permissions to do it. So this is another problem that we have here in Rio Piedras, is our bureaucracy. But that was an excellent idea. So we should have had actually products being sold on the tables out here. So we would have actually have begun what you are suggesting today, but unfortunately because of the postponement of this particular event and because of the bureaucracy here to get it all organized, we couldn't make it happen. But yeah, we should try to make it happen next time. And yes, I think we have Jasmine.
Hello, I'm Yasmin Sanchez Reyes, here from Utuado, and first I want to give thanks to Megan
who does not want to be identified. She doesn't want people to look at her, but she did that beautiful Sol del Tuado, which you have over there in the front, lo tejió. And so I wanted to say special thanks to Megan for that. And there it is at the front. And I also want to tell people that I think it's really important that we get out of our comfort zone. You know, these activities that the students put on the semester were things that they had never done before, and they just took a chance. And they weren't sure if anybody was going to go. They weren't sure if what the proper location would be. They had a lot of issues and problems with trying to get everything set up, but they were able to do it because they were determined and they knew that it was important. And that's exactly what our ancestors have shown us. That's exactly what we are trying to show, and we know that you in all your different ways are doing that as well. And I invite you all to keep doing that. Stay in touch with your friends. Here Natalie is with a friend who she hasn't seen in a while because he studies here in Piedras, she studies in Utuado. They're together now. Use that time to coordinate something. Come out to visit us in Utuado. Don't always make us come over here to the Área Metro. You know, come out there. Have a good time. Bring your family, bring your friends. You're going to see it's going to be a totally different experience, and you're going to enjoy it very much. So that's what I want to say. Thank you.
Okay, I think that's probably all we have time for right now. And we want to give a special thanks to our technical crew. They are sacrificing their lunch hour for us, but we don't want to make them sacrifice anymore. Anyway, there's a place to eat right across the way. There are places to eat right across the way. Thanks to all the presenters. Let's give everybody another round of applause. And we'll start back up again at 1 o'clock. I think Professor Kuwabong has an announcement.
Don't forget to fill the positives for that you experienced at this conference. I don't think there were any negatives. Okay, so fill that